The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Sycamore Street, painting the cracked pavement in hues of orange and purple. For Imani, these quiet hours were usually spent at the small, slightly wobbly table by the window of Hattie's Home Brew and Bites, her grandmother's café. From this vantage point, she could watch the occasional car whiz by, its occupants oblivious to the small, unassuming building that housed not only the town's best, kept secret for sweet iced tea, but also a wealth of untapped mechanical genius. Imani, at 11 years old, was a study in quiet observation. Her dark eyes, bright and intelligent, missed little. While other children her age might be lost in the vibrant glow of a phone screen or the energetic chaos of a playground, Imani found her solace in the dog-eared pages of her late grandfather's automotive manuals and the satisfying heft of his old tools. The attached garage, a relic of her grandpa Eli's once thriving repair business, was her sanctuary, filled with the ghosts of engines he'd coaxed back to life and the lingering scent of oil and ingenuity. Grandma Hattie, a woman whose spirit was as warm and comforting as the fresh, baked pies she sold, often sighed, a gentle sound like rustling leaves. "That child," she'd murmur, half to herself, half to the regulars nursing their coffees, got her grandpa's hands and his mind for machines. A blessing and a worry, all in one. The cafe and the small adjoining house were their life, a life woven with love and hard work. But lately, the threads of financial strain had become increasingly visible. Repairs on the aging building were constant, and customers, while loyal, were few. Today, however, the usual sleepy rhythm of Sycamore Street was abruptly broken. A magnificent growl, followed by a series of coughs and a final, defeated wheeze, announced an arrival. Imani looked up from sketching a differential gear assembly in her notebook. A car, sleek and powerful even in its distress, had shuddered to a halt directly opposite the café. It was a vision in gleaming candy apple red, a 1968 Ford Mustang Shelby GT500, its white racing stripes bold against the vibrant paint. Even Imani, whose knowledge was mostly theoretical and gleaned from faded photographs, knew this was something special. A man emerged from the driver's side, his tailored suit looking out of place against the backdrop of chipped paint and overgrown weeds. He was tall, with silver threading his dark hair, his expression a mask of profound exasperation. This was Mr. Alastair Finch, though Imani didn't know his name then. He ran a hand through his hair, muttered something under his breath, and then pulled out a high-end smartphone, already dialing. "Yes, it's Finch," he said, his voice crisp and authoritative despite the underlying frustration. Broke down again. Sycamore Street, of all places. Looks like a ghost town. He listened for a moment, his jaw tightening. "No, your last Tao couldn't figure it out, and neither could the specialist before that. It's the same intermittent electrical fault. I'm sure of it. Just get someone competent out here. And soon." Imani watched, her brow furrowed in concentration. She'd heard that particular death rattle before, from old Mr. Henderson's pickup truck. "An intermittent electrical fault," he'd said. She chewed on the end of her pencil, her gaze fixed on the silent beast across the road. The way it had stuttered, the dimming of the dashboard lights just before it gave up a familiar pattern began to form in her young mind. The problem wasn't just a loose wire, it was something more elusive, something that needed more than a cursory glance. It needed understanding. And Imani, for all her youth, was beginning to understand the language of machines in a way few ever could. Mr. Alastair Finch paced beside his immobilized Mustang, the picture of dignified impatience. His calls had yielded little promise of a swift resolution. The local garages were either closed for the day or unequipped to handle a temperamental classic like his Shelby. He'd already sunk a small fortune into trying to diagnose this recurring gremlin, and his patience was wearing perilously thin. He prided himself on his problem-solving abilities in the boardroom, but this beautiful machine, his one true indulgence, consistently baffled him. Inside the café, Imani had put down her pencil. The symptoms Mr. Finch described, the car's erratic behavior leading up to the stall, it all pointed to something she'd read about in one of Grandpa Ali's more advanced electrical system manuals. It was a peculiar issue, often misdiagnosed. "Grandma," Imani said softly, her voice barely a whisper above the hum of the old refrigerator. "That car. I think I know what might be wrong." Grandma Hattie paused from wiping down the counter, her warm smile gracing her granddaughter. "Oh, you do, sweet pea. What's your thinking?" She never dismissed Imani's mechanical insights. Eli had recognized his granddaughter's gift early on, fostering it with patience and shared enthusiasm. Hattie had seen Imani diagnose and even fix small appliances around the house that had stumped everyone else. "It sounds like a grounding issue, but not a simple one," Imani explained, her eyes distant as she visualized the complex circuitry. "Maybe in the custom harness, or a feedback loop from one of the older components not liking the newer regulator he probably had put in." Hattie didn't understand the jargon, but she understood the earnest conviction in Imani's tone. She looked out at Mr. Finch, who now leaned against his car, looking thoroughly dejected. "Well," Hattie said, a thoughtful expression on her face, "perhaps a little bit of neighborly help is in order." She dried her hands on her apron and stepped outside, Imani trailing shyly behind her, clutching a small, well-worn wrench almost by instinct. "Afternoon, sir," Hattie said, her voice calm and kind. "Having a bit of trouble with that beautiful car?" Mr. Finch looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Good afternoon." "Yes, quite a bit, I'm afraid. She's a temperamental old girl. My granddaughter, Imani." Hattie gestured towards the girl who half hid behind her. "She was just mentioning, well, she has a bit of a knack for these things. Inherited from her grandpa, he was a wonder with engines." Finch's gaze fell upon Imani, a small, serious child. He offered a polite, if somewhat strained, smile. "Is that so? Well, that's very kind, but I assure you, several certified mechanics have been stumped." He wasn't unkind, merely skeptical. What could a child possibly know that seasoned professionals didn't? Imani, emboldened by her grandmother's presence, spoke up, her voice soft but clear. "Sir, did it make a kind of buzzing sound from under the dash just before it cut out, and did the lights flicker really fast?" Finch blinked. "Why, yes," he admitted, a touch of surprise coloring his tone. "It did exactly that." "How did you know?" "It might be the voltage regulator sending spikes to the ignition coil because of a bad ground further down the line," Imani stated simply. "Sometimes, when people add new parts to old cars, the grounds don't match up right." Alastair Finch stared at the young girl. Her explanation, though technical, was delivered with an unshakable, quiet confidence. He was a man who dealt with high-level executives and complex financial models, yet here, on a dusty roadside, a child was speaking a language of mechanical logic that resonated with an uncomfortable accuracy. He'd heard his mechanics talk in circles, replacing part after part, but none had pinpointed the symptoms with such clarity. What Finch didn't realize at that moment, the narrative might have whispered, was that he was face to face with a rawning, prodigious talent, nurtured in the unassuming crucible of a forgotten workshop. He looked from Imani to her grandmother, then back to the silent Mustang. Desperation and a sudden, inexplicable flicker of curiosity warred within him. "And you think you could take a look?" he asked, the question hanging in the warm air. Imani nodded, a shy smile finally gracing her lips. "I can try, sir." Grandma Hattie gave a reassuring nod. She's got a gentle touch and a way of listening to what machines are trying to say. Alastair Finch, a man who rarely acted on impulse, made a decision. "All right, young lady," he said, a new note in his voice. "Let's see what you can do. What have I got to lose?" The opportunity, as it were, had presented itself, not in a gleaming corporate office, but on the sun-drenched asphalt of Sycamore Street. Mr. Alastair Finch, a man accustomed to delegating multi-million-dollar decisions, now found himself handing over the keys to his prized 1968 Shelby GT500 to an 11-year-old girl with grease already smudging her cheek. Imani didn't seem fazed by the expensive vintage machine or its owner's weighty presence. For her, it was simply another puzzle, another intricate system waiting to be understood. She popped the hood, the heavy metal groaning in protest, and propped it open. Then, she retrieved a small wooden step stool from the café, allowing her to peer properly into the cavernous engine bay. "Could you try to start it one more time, sir?" she asked, her voice muffled as she leaned in, her attention already absorbed. "I want to hear it." Finch, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and burgeoning hope, slid into the driver's seat. He turned the key. The engine gave a pathetic cough, a spark of light flickered on the dash, and then silence, accompanied by that distinct, faint buzzing Imani had mentioned. "Okay," she said, nodding to herself. She began her work with a focus that was almost unnerving in someone so young. Her small hands, surprisingly deft, moved with purpose, tracing wires, checking connections. She asked Finch for a few specific tools from his car's emergency kit, a multimeter, a particular socket wrench. He was surprised she knew their names and functions so precisely. Grandma Hattie watched from the cafe doorway, a quiet pride in her eyes, behind the scenes. A different kind of assessment was unfolding in Alastair Finch's mind. He was a venture capitalist by trade, his success built on recognizing undervalued assets and potential where others saw none. He was beginning to sense he'd stumbled upon something extraordinary here, something far more valuable than a quick car repair. Imani hummed softly, a tune her grandfather used to favor. As she worked, she pointed to a section of the wiring harness near the firewall. "See this, sir," she said, inviting Finch to look. "This aftermarket alarm system, the ground wire is corroded, and it looks like it's tied into the main ignition feed. When it heats up, the resistance probably spikes, and it's trying to draw too much current, starving the coil and tripping the regulators over. Voltage protection. That's the buzz." Finch leaned in, trying to follow her explanation. He'd paid a premium for that alarm system years ago, assured it was top of the line. Now it seemed it was the very source of his automotive torment. "So, what do we do?" he asked, genuinely curious now, his earlier skepticism evaporating like morning mist. "For now," Imani said, "we can bypass it with a temporary clean ground to the chassis and see if it starts properly." If it does, then you'll need to have that alarm system rewired or replaced, making sure they use a dedicated ground. She carefully selected a length of insulated wire and a couple of alligator clips from her grandfather's kit. With meticulous care, she created the temporary ground, her small fingers working with an artisan's precision. It took her about 20 minutes, during which she barely spoke, lost in her task. The only sounds were the distant chirp of crickets and the soft clink of metal on metal. Finally, she stepped back. "Okay, Mr. Finch, try it now, please." There was a different quality to the air, a sense of anticipation. Finch slid back into the driver's seat, his heart thumping a little faster than usual. He took a breath and turned the key. The engine hesitated for a fraction of a second, then erupted with a powerful, clean roar. The deep, throaty rumble of the V8 filled Sycamore Street, a sound of pure, unadulterated American muscle. It didn't just start, it sang. The dashboard lights glowed steadily, brightly. The faint buzzing was gone. Imani listened, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. It was the telltale hum of a happy engine. Alastair Finch let the Mustang's engine idle for a full minute, listening to its smooth, powerful rhythm. A grin wide and unreserved spread across his face. He revved it gently, and the car responded with an eager growl, no hesitation, no sputtering. It was alive, truly alive, in a way it hadn't been for months, perhaps years. He cut the engine and stepped out of the car, a sense of profound relief and astonishment washing over him. "Imani," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. That was incredible. Absolutely incredible. You've done what a string of so-called experts couldn't." Imani shuffled her feet, a blush rising on her cheeks. "It was just a bad ground, sir. Sometimes the simplest things are the easiest to overlook." "Perhaps," Finch conceded, "but it takes a special kind of insight to see that simplicity. You, young lady, have a remarkable gift." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. He extracted a thick sheaf of $100 bills, far more than a typical repair would warrant. "Please," he said, holding them out. "This is for your time, your expertise, and for saving me from another night stranded by the roadside." Imani's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the money, but she hesitated. Grandma Hattie stepped forward. "That's very generous of you, sir," she said, her voice warm. "But that's too much for just helping out a neighbor." "Nonsense," Finch insisted. "It's worth every penny and more." He looked at Imani. "You earned it, please." Imani, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, slowly reached out her small, grease-stained hand. As their hands met, Finch's gaze was drawn to something else. Around Imani's neck, tucked slightly into the collar of her T-shirt, was a fine silver chain. Suspended from it was a ring, an old, intricately designed gold band. It wasn't flashy, but it had an undeniable air of craftsmanship and history. The way the late afternoon sun caught the engraved details on its surface made it gleam with a quiet significance. He had noticed it peripherally when she was leaning into the engine bay, but now, up close, something about its design tugged at a distant memory, a faint echo from his past. It was an unusual design, a stylized eagle with its wings forming the band, its talons clutching a tiny, almost imperceptible cog. "That's a very unique ring," Finch remarked, his voice softer now, his attention shifting from the car to the piece of jewelry. He was a collector of rare and beautiful things, and the ring had the hallmark of bespoke artistry. Imani instinctively touched the ring, her expression becoming more somber. "It was my grandpa's," she said, her voice filled with a quiet reverence. "He always wore it. Grandma lets me wear it on this chain so I don't lose it," he said. "It was his good luck charm." Grandma Hattie nodded, her eyes misting over slightly. Ely was rarely without it. He said it reminded him of where he came from and what he was capable of building. Alastair Finch found himself inexplicably drawn to the ring. The craftsmanship was superb, the detail exquisite even with years of wear. But it was more than that. There was something naggingly familiar about the stylized eagle and the tiny cog. "May I?" he asked gently, gesturing towards the ring. Imani nodded and carefully lifted the chain over her head, placing the ring into Finch's outstretched palm. He turned it over, examining the intricate engraving more closely. Inside the band, almost worn smooth with time, were two tiny initials EP, and beside them a miniature, stamped version of the same eagle and cog emblem. A jolt, sharp and unexpected, went through Alastair Finch EP. The eagle and the cog. It couldn't be. Not after all these years. He felt a sudden dizziness, the world narrowing to the small, golden object resting in his hand. His heart began to pound, not from the excitement of a repaired car, but from the sudden, electrifying possibility of a connection he thought long lost. The weight of the gold ring in Alastair Finch's palm felt far greater than its physical mass, the initials EP. And the distinctive eagle and cog emblem were not just decorative, they were a signature, a maker's mark he hadn't seen in decades, yet one he had never truly forgotten. "Imani," he began, his voice carefully controlled. "Your grandfather, what was his full name?" "Elijah Palmer, sir," Imani replied, but everyone just called him Eli. Elijah Palmer. Eli. The name resonated through Finch like a struck chord. He looked from the ring to Imani's earnest face, then to Grandma Hattie, whose expression was one of gentle curiosity. What Imani didn't realize, the undercurrent of the narrative seemed to whisper, was that the name Eli Palmer and that specific insignia were about to unravel a significant part of Alastair Finch's own history, bridging a gap of nearly 40 years. "Hattie." Finch addressed Imani's grandmother, his gaze intense. "This ring, this emblem, I knew an Eli Palmer once, a brilliant young mechanic, an artist with engines. He worked out of a small shop in the city's industrial district a long time ago. He had a mind like no other, ideas that were years ahead of their time." Grandma Hattie's eyes widened. "In the city, before he moved out here and opened his own place, yes, that was my Eli. He always said he learned his real trade in a little shop that smelled of ambition and axle grace." Finch felt a lump form in his throat. "He apprenticed for a short while at my father's first garage, Finch and Sons Automotive. I was just a boy then, more interested in getting under the hoods than in my school books. Eli was older, a mentor to me, really. He taught me how to truly listen to an engine, how to respect the craft. He had this incredible talent for fabrication, for making parts that were better than the originals. He even designed a few custom tools, and he had this ring. He designed it himself, said it symbolized precision and vision, the eagle's sight, the gear's mechanics." He looked at Imani, a sense of awe dawning on him. He was working on a special project back then, a revolutionary carburetor design, I think. But then, there was a fire at his own small workshop after he left my father's place to strike out on his own. We heard he'd moved away, lost everything. I tried to find him years later, but he'd vanished. Grandma Hattie's hand flew to her mouth. The fire, yes. It broke his heart. He lost so much. All his schematics, his prototypes. We moved out here to the country not long after, hoping for a fresh start. He rebuilt, little by little, but I don't think he ever truly got over losing that early work. He never spoke much of his time in the city. Alistair Finch felt a profound sense of regret and a burgeoning excitement. Eli Palmer, the near-mythical figure from his youth, the genius whose spark had ignited his own lifelong passion for automotive engineering, was Imani's grandfather. This gifted child hadn't just inherited a few old tools, she'd inherited a direct line to that brilliance. "This Mustang," Finch said, gesturing to the car. "Your grandfather, you said he dreamed of restoring one just like this." Imani nodded. A '68 Shelby GT 500. It was his ultimate dream car. He had an old, faded picture of one pinned above his workbench. He said it was the perfect blend of power and beauty. Finch was silent for a moment, the pieces clicking into place with an almost audible snap. The universe, it seemed, worked in mysterious and wonderful ways. He had been searching for a chief restoration expert for a new heritage division his company was launching, someone with an almost innate understanding of classic car mechanics, someone with that rare spark of genius. He had interviewed dozens, but none felt right. And here, on a forgotten street, stood the granddaughter of the very man who had first inspired him, a child who had diagnosed a problem that had eluded everyone else, all thanks to the legacy encapsulated in a small golden ring. It wasn't just a coincidence, it felt like destiny. The revelation hung in the air, thick with unspoken history and newfound connection. Mr. Finch looked at Imani, no longer seeing just a bright child who was good with cars, but the inheritor of a remarkable legacy, a direct link to his own formative years and to a genius he had long admired. "Imani," he said, his voice filled with a new warmth and respect, "your grandfather was more than just a good mechanic. He was an innovator. The ideas he had back then, they were revolutionary. That carburetor design he was working on, I've seen modern engineers struggle with concepts he was sketching out on napkins 40 years ago." Grandma Hattie listened, tears welling in her eyes. "He never boasted, my Eli. Always said he was just a tinkerer, but I knew there was something extraordinary in him." "Extraordinary indeed," Finch affirmed. He paced for a moment, the repaired Mustang gleaming silently beside him, a testament to the Palmer family talent. The confrontation now was not with any antagonist, but within Finch himself, a confrontation with circumstance, with the past, and with the profound realization of what stood before him. He had the means to change these lives, to honor his old mentor, and to nurture this incredible young talent. The decision was clear. "Hetty, Imani," he began, turning back to them, his expression resolute. "This isn't just a chance encounter. I believe this was meant to be." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I run a company, Finch Innovations. We have a new division dedicated to restoring and preserving classic and historically significant automobiles. We call it the Heritage Fleet. I've been searching for someone with a unique touch, someone with Eli's kind of vision, to help lead it." He looked directly at Imani. "Your grandfather's dream of restoring a Shelby. What if we could do more than that? What if we could bring his entire legacy back to life?" Imani's eyes, already wide, grew even larger. Grandma Hattie simply stared, unsure what to make of this sudden, monumental turn of events. "The workshop your grandfather had?" Finch continued, "The one attached to the café. Is it still there?" "Still functional?" It's there," Hattie said hesitantly. "But it's seen better days. Most of the good equipment was lost or sold off over the years. Eli kept it as best he could, and Imani, well, she treasures what's left. I want to restore it," Finch declared. "Not just patch it up, but fully equip it. State-of-the-art tools, diagnostic equipment, everything Eli could have ever dreamed of. We'll call it the Eli Palmer Memorial Workshop. It won't just be a place to fix cars. It will be a place of learning, of innovation." He then turned to Imani, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "And Imani, I want to offer you a full scholarship, starting now, for the best STEM programs, all the way through university. Whatever you want to study, engineering, design, anything. And when you're ready, there will be a place for you at Finch Innovations, perhaps even running this workshop, carrying on your grandfather's work, if that's what you choose." He wasn't just offering a job or money. He was offering the recognition and cultivation of her inherent genius, a chance to fulfill a legacy she hadn't even fully known existed. He also spoke of investing in Hattie's café, ensuring she had the security and comfort she deserved. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, bathing Sycamore Street in a soft, golden light. For Imani and Grandma Hattie, it felt like the dawn of a new day. The ring, still warm in Finch's hand before he gently passed it back to Imani to place around her neck, had been more than a memento. It had been a key, unlocking a future beyond their wildest imaginings. The silence that followed Finch's pronouncements wasn't one of doubt, but of profound, hopeful disbelief, the kind that precedes a life irrevocably changed for the better. The weeks that followed Alistair Finch's astounding proposal were a whirlwind of activity on Sycamore Street. True to his word, Finch didn't just make promises. He set them into motion with the same decisiveness and efficiency that had built his corporate empire. Contractors, architects, and equipment suppliers descended upon Grandma Hattie's property, not with disruptive force, but with a respectful energy, transforming the old, tired garage into a beacon of modern engineering, all while preserving its historical soul. The newly christened Eli Palmer Memorial Workshop gleamed. Lifts hummed quietly, diagnostic computers blinked with readiness, and rows of brand new tools lay neatly organized in gleaming chests, a stark contrast to Grandpa Eli's beloved but worn collection, which now held a place of honor in a custom-built display case. Grandma Hattie's Cafe, too, received a gentle facelift, fresh paint, comfortable new seating, an upgraded kitchen, all while retaining its cozy, welcoming charm. She found herself humming more, her steps lighter. For Imani, the transformation was internal as much as external. Mr. Finch arranged for specialized tutors and enrolled her in advanced science and math programs, which she absorbed with an eager mind. He became a mentor, much like Eli had been to him, guiding her, challenging her, and celebrating her insights. He'd often bring schematics for classic cars from his heritage fleet, and they'd spend hours poring over them in the new workshop, Imani's observations often startling him with their depth and originality. The first official project of the Eli Palmer Memorial Workshop was, fittingly, a 1968 Shelby GT500, not Mr. Finch's, which was now purring perfectly, but an identical barn find he had acquired, a diamond in the rough. Under the guidance of a kindly, experienced chief mechanic, Finch hired Seka, who quickly recognized Imani's prodigious talent and treated her As a valued junior partner, Imani played a central role in its meticulous nut and bolt restoration. Her small hands, which had once only tinkered with scraps, now confidently reassembled engines and fine-tuned delicate carburetors. The vindication was complete. Imani, once the quiet girl in the background, was now a recognized talent, her future bright with promise. Her grandfather's legacy, once a fading memory, was now a vibrant, living entity, fostering innovation and providing inspiration. The workshop wasn't just for show. Finch established a small apprentice program for local youth, with Imani already tabbed as a future mentor. The broader impact was palpable. Sycamore Street, once sleepy and overlooked, began to see more visitors, drawn by the revived café and the buzz around the miraculous workshop and its young prodigy. Mr. Finch, for his part, found a renewed sense of purpose, his passion for classic cars, now intertwined with a mission to discover and nurture hidden talents, just as Ely Palmer had once nurtured his. One sunny afternoon, months later, Imani stood beside Mr. Finch as the fully restored Shelby GT500, a mirror image of her grandfather's dream car, rolled out of the workshop, its engine thrumming a perfect, powerful note. The candy apple red paint gleamed, the white stripes sharp and proud. Around her neck, the gold ring with the eagle and cog felt warm against her skin, a constant reminder of where she came from and the incredible journey it had started. She wasn't just fixing cars. She was building dreams, her own and those of others, just like her grandpa Eli would have wanted. And so, Imani's keen eye and skillful hands not only fixed a Millionaire's Mustang, but also reconnected a lost legacy, proving that incredible talent and profound connections can be found where you least expect them. The ring on her finger was more than just jewelry, it was a key to a brighter future. If this story of unexpected skill and heartwarming connections stirred something in you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring narratives about people who turned adversity into triumph. What was the most impactful moment for you?